Okay. Ready, Whitney?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Carissa Massical, and I have here with me Dr. Whitney Oberndorf. So, Dr. Oberndorf has a wide array of experience from being a classroom teacher, instructional technology coach, an instructional systems specialist for the federal government, and now the coordinator of instructional technology and personalized learning for the school district of Williamsburg. Dr. Oberndorf or Whitney, I would say, uh, would you like to give a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. So, as Carissa said, I currently serve as the coordinator of instructional technology and personalized learning in Williamsburg. And my main role here is to support um, instructional technology throughout the district, including new programs, and also work with the technology integration coaches. My background is in STEM education, and I started my career as a science teacher. So that's always included in everything that I do. It always goes back to that.
Okay, great to know, Whitney. And I just want to give you a brief background about what this interview would be. So it would focus on standards, policies, and strategic planning in relation to educational technology.
Okay.
Okay, so I have here my first question with you. How does your school or your district, I'd say, align its educational technology practices with state or national standards?
So the primary way is that we use the state and national standards to drive our implementation of instructional technology. So we obviously have to meet all of those requirements, and those are kind of like a baseline, but they are also a minimum requirement. Um, and a lot of times when you dig through those documents and legislation, it's kind of like a very general overview,
Mm.
but it provides, like I said, a foundation to ensure that all students have particular access, equitable resources, and then the district kind of builds on top of those baseline documents.
Okay, great to know. Can you provide certain examples of how your district, um, let's say, try to specify the approach regarding this matter?
So, for example, like the ESSA that came out in 2015 discusses different titles, and it discusses how students have to have equitable access, including technology. So there's like Title IV funding and Title I funding that are both used,
Mm.
in certain circumstances, to help fund educational technology and to essentially justify the reason um, for that. There is also the state of Virginia has a technology plan that we use to kind of guide how technology is integrated into learning. And also, like, even for example, recently Virginia has had an executive order from the state put out regarding the use of artificial intelligence in education, and that it needs to be integrated into public school.
Okay. That's great to know. And do you think all these standards affect the method and strategies that you consider when it comes to providing professional development?
Yes, those definitely impact professional development, because we really have to try to, instructional technology is so big and there's so many different things, and especially like depending on what grade level a teacher is in, or even like non-teachers, other roles in the school system. Depending on what's going on, there's so many things that have to be covered in so little time. So a lot of we we have certain areas that we have to be sure to include, like, last year was a huge literacy initiative, so there was training regarding literacy programs that had to be used. Um, and we really most of our PD time is the beginning of the year, which is kind of like it's a like a survival of the fittest, and we have to keep trying to figure out like who gets this time and who gets this time, and we really end up with 4 hours if we're lucky. So trying to really look at like what's the big push. Like this year, we will discuss AI. That will be for the upcoming school year. We already know that that's one of the huge pieces when we have our beginning of the year professional development. Um, we offer a lot of like asynchronous learning throughout the summer in Canvas for different instructional technology resources, but and throughout the year there's optional PD, but as far as required PD, there's not a lot that we're able to require from the district level in instructional technology.
Okay. So would you consider that as one of the challenges that you face when it comes to implementing technology related policies?
Definitely. The time is definitely a problem. And also, there's still a lot of situations where um I don't want to say that people think instructional technology is not important. That's not the right words, but it's kind of like, well, math is more important and we have to do this, we have a new curriculum, which is important to, obviously the teachers need to know what they're teaching. So we have this new curriculum and we need to focus our time on this instead of learning how to use this program. I think there's this idea that the use of a program can just be taught through like an email or through a handout
Mhm.
versus a legitimate professional development opportunity.
Okay. All right. So now that we're talking about the challenges that you face in your district, um, can let can I try to just widen the perspective and just to extend its relation to uh, data privacy, cybersecurity, or digital citizenship? Can you walk me through some challenges that you're facing in these areas?
Um, Digital citizenship as a whole is not heavily integrated into lessons. And I think that there's even adults, I don't think we really understand like our digital footprint and understanding all of those, pieces of digital citizenship. It's not, it definitely is about being kind to others online, and not saying things that we wouldn't say face to face. But it also comes down to privacy and it comes down to, exposure to things that we shouldn't be exposed to, or kids shouldn't be exposed to. So that's a big piece that we're trying to help teachers integrate into lessons, and trying to help them kind of overcome that, as well as allowing the teacher to understand a lot of those aspects. And one big thing we find is that teachers find a tool. And I mean, I've been in the classroom, we find something and we're like, oh, this is great. I want to use it with my kids. And we have two situations. It's either blocked for the kids or it's not. If it's blocked and you try to get it unblocked, at least there's a little bit more of a process there to ensure that it's a viable resource. But for those tools that aren't blocked, teachers say, oh, okay, let's go create accounts and then we're going to go on this and we're going to use it. But they don't take note of the fact that there's an age restriction for that product. And that, you have 12-year-olds using it, but you're really not supposed to use it if you're under the age of 13. Or especially a lot of free products, we can't fully know what they're doing with student data and what sort of personal information is being input when kids are creating those accounts. The other problem we have with even like right now, Blooket, I think is how you say it. It's not Blooket. It looks like Blooket, but it's pronounced different. Um, you know, that's not, you're not supposed to use that in our districts because students can go on and kind of like create their own game, and the images aren't censored. So you can literally put in anything and find images from, across the internet. Or even like the chat feature in Scratch, which,
Hmm.
the use of Scratch outweighs that, but that is something that people have to be cognizant of.
Mhm.
that these chats are not monitored, and there could be things transpiring there that, we don't want kids exposed to.
Yeah. I mean, in my experience as well, it's it's hard to, avoid some stuff without trying to limit their learning as well, because you still want them
Yeah,
to experience or to have the full experience of a software or a device, but they have their own limitations as well. Yeah, that's
definitely.
pretty complicated. Yeah. Anyway, so you touched base a while ago that following state or national standards ensure that everyone has equitable access. So when it comes to this matter, especially with digital learning opportunities, how do you ensure that everyone is given equitable and accessible access to technologies?
So our district has a one-to-one program where students have window devices. Secondary are able to bring those home. There is a paper that parents or guardians have to sign to say, yes, I approve of my child bringing this device home. Elementary students, last year, they started where elementary students do not bring those devices home. But they are not on a regular basis, they are not asked to do assignments outside of the regular school hours that would require an electronic device of some sort. Um, in special circumstances, they can check a device out to bring home. Like, let's say you have a kid who has had a family situation and has been off the grid for 2 weeks, and they need to get called up or things of that nature. So there are special circumstances and loopholes to that. Um, the district also offers like MiFi devices to families that they can families who demonstrate a need, they can check those out and have Wi-Fi at home. Now those do have to be returned at the end of the year, so it's there's not something that they keep over the summer, but it provides them with an opportunity to have an internet connection at home.
Oh, okay, that's a great plan. Oh, also, this is a side question. Have you encountered any student that still doesn't have Wi-Fi access at home? And for those situation, what is usually the plan of the district to ensure that they can still access materials, online materials when they are not at school?
Yes, so we have had students who still they don't have internet access at home, or they don't have an option to have, like a hotspot on a cell phone. So those are the families that would either have check out a MiFi device, or we also put them in contact. We don't have the ability to do this ourselves, but we put them in contact with um, like free internet providers, depending on
Like
certain.
library?
No, like Cox Internet, like they have a free
Oh,
internet program for for people who meet specific criteria and live in certain locations. So we have found that some families do qualify for free internet or internet that's like $5 a month. So very affordable for those families. But we try to do everything we can to, in some cases it's physically assisting them, by providing a MiFi. But in some cases, it's we're going to give you all of the resources to obtain internet, you know, an affordable internet on your own accord.
okay. Oh, okay. That's great to know. Okay. Now, Whitney, I want to move forward I want to move forward on strategic technology planning. And I want to ask you, how is it aligned with the academic goals and broader district priorities?
So planning is primarily always going to be driven by some sort of academic need that's been identified. Something that has been brought to our attention, whether it's by, data from an assessment that's showing, hey,
Mhm.
these students don't have X, Y, and Z. Whether it is someone in a classroom who notices something and kind of puts like a bug in the ear. And sometimes it's also driven by changes at the state level. So the state of Virginia also has digital integration standards and computer science standards that are essentially required to be taught, especially or they're supposed to be integrated into core content um, at a K to 8 level. Um, so like, for in those cases, there's an identified need because something new has been added by the state, and we have to change the way we do things to meet um, those requirements. Um, so there's also other situations or circumstances that are taken into account. For example, like what does the research suggest? What is proven to, work based on the particular need? And then also the cost. Cost is also taken into consideration because that is a big piece of, the technology use and the side of things. And we have to look at what tools do we have, and if we're trying to, implement a new tool, does it replace any of the other tools? Could we utilize the tools that we currently have to meet that need?
Mhm.
Um, and it really has to be a collective conversation. It's not just the technology department, making all sorts of decisions because truthfully, in the technology department of roughly probably, 20 people, um, two, maybe three of us have actually been in a classroom. A lot of those folks are engineers or they, manage their, they don't mess with, they run the network or they
Mhm.
are, data analysis or they are doing something with like the student information system. So they have different um, roles outside of traditional teaching. So we really work a lot with the curriculum and instruction team who drive instruction to determine what do we need, and then we kind of come in and say, well, this is what we could use to meet that need, and then we collectively work together to reach a solution.
Okay. So would you say that in that strategy, when it comes to planning, would you rather make a decision that is top down or otherwise?
Hmm.
What I meant is like basing your decision from what is really going on in the classroom or viewing it with a bird's eye view from the top.
I think that the classroom is the most important piece because there are a lot of things that look really great on paper, or they look really great from just looking through different resources that are available, but when you really get into, like, the nitty-gritty of it, it doesn't do what you need it to do,
Yeah.
or it doesn't it doesn't solve the problem, um, that you have at hand. Like, we've looked at, like, different internet monitoring software, and, some of the products and set through demos, and some of the products that had, like, wonderful websites and, were flashy and sold all the things. When we did a demo, it was like, "This is terrible. This will never work."
Mm,
It's not gonna do the things that we need it to do for our students.
yeah.
And ultimately, it's not about the technology, it's about the learning.
Yeah.
And the technology is there to support that. But if we're making decisions because, it's the end thing to do or it's, the the hot item at that time, if we're making decisions based on that, then we're really getting away from the purpose of making that
Hmm.
decision.
Yeah.
And the kids learning is the most important aspect.
Yeah. So basically going back to the core and not prioritizing the bells and the whistles.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. All right. So uh, I'm down to my last two questions. So
Okay.
second to the last one would be some examples, if you can share some, of technology initiative that had measurable impact on teaching, learning, or operation. This can be based from your experience or from what you've seen and from what you've seen from other districts, just anything that you can remember of.
I would say one of those, like a product such as IXL. So IXL offers it's primarily used in math and reading. It offers science and social studies. But it essentially allows students to go and they call it stepping into an arena. But you go in and kids take, questions, pretest essentially, and it places them on a particular level. And you can kind of use it for progress monitoring. Every, can't remember the exact time frame, I'm sorry, but students can go in and update, to kind of discuss like the new things that they've or they can showcase the new things that they've learned. Um, but it levels students and it provides differentiated instruction for those students. So it recommends skills that they need to work on. It shows the teacher their strengths. Um, and one reason that I really like it is because it is like a live in the moment, real time. This is what the kid knows. This is what the kid needs to work on. Um, and if you have a class of 22 kids in fourth grade, it really breaks down this is what this kid knows, this is what this one knows, and it's adaptive to meet their needs. And that, and although we've had programs that had computer adaptive, testing type situations, you still really have to take a lot of time to comb through that data to see what it's telling you. Um, the reports can be kind of clunky with a lot of those products. And it doesn't develop practice for the students in the here and now.
Mhm.
It's something that, the teacher has to go and say, oh, well, this kid needs help, with adding unlike fractions. And they have to find other resources. Whereas IXL is kind of like a bundle of all of those things. Um, and I would also say resources such as Canvas, like just learning
Yeah.
management systems in general,
Mhm.
and their adoption at the K to 12 level have really changed like the landscape
Yeah.
of, the
Making
classroom.
it more personalized. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So there's technology has always been fast paced, right? So what are your ways or what are your practices to stay ahead of emerging trends and technology while making sure that you are in compliance with the existing standards and policies that we have on hand?
I'm a Google Scholar guru, so I'll just Google Scholar different things just to see what's out there because educational technology is consistently changing,
Hmm.
especially because of our big push with AI. That's something where new stuff, the research on AI from 2 years ago is completely different than what's occurring right now.
Hmm. And
Um,
how people use it
so yes,
actually
and
is way
how it's
different. Yeah.
being yes, how it's being used, how it's being, accepted. The expectation of its use has drastically changed. I also follow, there are certain like educational blogs that I follow. Usually me personally, like I'll get a topic in my mind and I'll just go search it and then I find different resources. And then I end up with like 47 post-it notes and random things written down to kind
Yeah.
of like, I go down a rabbit hole and that's usually what happens for me. Um, and then, you know, I, I also have like colleagues in other districts that, I kind of keep in contact with to see what are they doing. And um, even people in my own district and, in any job I've ever had. So I think one big thing is that, you know, we each have kind of our thing and
Hmm.
we have our little area of expertise or the things that we're really the most passionate about. Um, but then we have things that we're like, look, I know a little bit about it, but I'm not an expert. But I think that, you know, we have to be open to what's the word I'm looking for. I don't want to say being respectful, but valuing the ideas and the expertise of other people.
Yeah.
And I think, you really have to collaborate. And I think collaborating is one of the huge pieces that kind of keeps us all up to date with what's going
Hmm.
on.
Yeah.
Um, and then, the state sends out a newsletter monthly, like an instructional technology newsletter monthly. So, I use that to ensure, that everything is on par with what the state expects.
Mm. Wow. Okay. So you've given us a lot of information to digest, Whitney, and thank you so much for your time tonight. Just one last thing. What can you advise to inspiring teachers or leaders who would like to be in your role someday?
I think that you definitely you have to be flexible and you have to be willing to adapt, like on the blink of an eye, because technology is constantly changing. Um, and I think that, you really have to use like a growth mindset. Um, even if there's, a technology and at first, even as a tech person, there's things that I hear about and I'm like, really, this are we really gonna use this, or is
Mm,
this gonna be the best thing? And then once I kind of start diving and I get out of my own hesitation, I guess, um, you really see the value in that. So you definitely have to be open-minded, and you also have to be ready to realize that although we live in this like evolving tech savvy world, um, we live in a very reluctant society. And there's a lot of folks who don't want to use the technology. They don't see the value in it. They say, well, I didn't learn it that way, so why do they have to learn it that way?
yeah.
And which is a terrible mindset to have.
Like fix
Um,
what? Don't
yeah,
fix something that is
yeah,
not broken. Yeah.
not broken. And but these students are a different generation, and these are digital natives, whereas they're not who I was at their age. And they don't have, I didn't have the resources that they have, and in some cases they didn't have resources that I had. But so I think that you always have to maintain an open mind. Um, and always be curious, because there's always things that are changing. You can't get complacent. You have to continue to grow and change with those things.
You have to continuously oil the gear. That's what they
Yes.
say. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Dr.
You're welcome.
Oberndorf. And it's always a pleasure talking to you.
Yes,
Thank
most
you.
definitely.
And to everyone, I hope you learned. I'm not hoping. I know you've learned so much from Dr. Oberndorf. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Whitney.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.